Your promotion means you're now responsible for all expenses. My dad announced a family dinner. New rule, you pay for everything. I just became a director with a salary of $240,000. I responded sure. Then I moved to Seattle without telling anyone. When they sent the first bill back, it said, address unknown. Hey, read it. That night, when my father made the announcement, nobody reacted. What stuck with me wasn't just the words but how seamlessly they filled the room, as if they had been waiting for the right moment to be said. We were at the dinner table, plates half empty, the conversation drifting as it usually did when my parents were relaxed. The overhead light was too bright, shining off the polished table. My mother was already thinking about dessert. My brother was on his phone. I had just told them about my promotion. I'm now a director, I said, still getting used to saying it. The salary is $240,000. There was a pause, not one of surprise or pride, but a calculating one. My mother smiled politely, like she does when something indirectly benefits her. My brother nodded once, already losing interest. My father leaned back in his chair, hands folded over his stomach. Then he smiled and said, well, that means you pay for everything now. For a moment I honestly thought I misheard him. What? I asked. He laughed as if I had missed a joke. New rule, he continued. You cover all family expenses. Makes sense, right? You're finally making real money. The room was silent. No one disagreed, no one laughed, no one asked if he was serious. That silence spoke volumes. To me, landing a $240,000 salary meant security and breathing room after years of late nights and skipped vacations. To them, it was about access. Absolutely, I said, the words slipping out before I fully thought it through. That was another habit I hadn't realized I had, agreeing before understanding what I was agreeing to. My mother visibly relaxed. I knew you'd understand, she said warmly. Family supports family. My brother smiled then, just a little. That phrase, family supports family, would echo in my mind months later when I couldn't recall the last time anyone asked how I was doing. At first, it didn't feel risky. It began with dinner bills, then groceries, then covering a hotel for a family wedding. Just this once, my father would say. But it was never just once. Soon, requests didn't sound like requests anymore. You can cover this, right? You can handle it. It's easier if you take care of it. They said it casually, as if my role had already been assigned and accepted. I told myself it was temporary, that this was what success looked like, and being a good daughter meant this. Every time I hesitated, the language changed. You've changed. Money made you selfish. We didn't raise you like this. Those words hit harder than they should have because they were familiar, used on me long before money was involved. Whenever I set a boundary or chose myself, I worked harder, longer hours, justified it by saying I was building something, even as my own savings stagnated. One night, my father slid a folded paper across the table without looking at me. What's this? I asked. Roof estimate, he replied casually. Needs fixing. I opened it. $18,400. My stomach tightened. I wasn't consulted about this, I said carefully. My father, annoyed, replied, why would we ask? You're paying. That was the moment something shifted, not loudly but permanently. I began to notice things: how often my phone buzzed with bills, how rarely it buzzed just to check in, how plans were made before conversations happened. One afternoon, I overheard my mother on the phone. Yes, she laughed. She covers it now. It's such a relief. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, city lights flickering through the window, feeling something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before: resentment. Not because I was helping, but because I was no longer choosing to. At the next dinner, my father stacked receipts beside my plate like it was normal. Electric bill, insurance, travel costs, all yours, he said cheerfully. I smiled. Absolutely. Inside, something hardened. I went home that night and opened a spreadsheet, tracking every expense, every payment, every assumption. I watched the numbers grow, not in my account, but in what was taken from me. I realized something uncomfortable: generosity, once expected, becomes obligation. Obligation, once enforced, becomes control. And control doesn't announce itself, it just assumes you won't leave. That night, I asked myself a question I had avoided for years: what happens if I stop being reachable? What my family didn't realize as they quietly turned my promotion into their lifestyle was that I had begun planning how to disappear from every bill they thought I would always pay. The first thing I learned after I stopped paying was how loud silence could be. For years, my phone had been a pipeline: money flowing one way, expectations the other. I had trained myself to respond immediately, to fix things before they broke. So when I stopped responding, it felt wrong at first, almost cruel, but I didn't feel guilty. I felt still. Messages came in waves. At first, they were casual, like nothing had changed. Hey, the electric bill is due. Insurance auto-renewed. Just cover this one too. I read them all. I didn't reply to any. Then the tone changed. My father called 3 times in one afternoon. I let it ring. He left a voicemail, sounding almost amused. Call me back, he said. Let's not make this weird. Weird as if this hadn't been strange for years. At work, I quietly finalized my move. HR handled everything professionally. My manager congratulated me again, saying Seattle would be good for someone at my level. No one asked why I hadn't told my family. They didn't need to. Packing was easier than I thought. I realized how little of my life actually belonged to them. The guilt, yes. The conditioning, absolutely. But the physical proof? Almost nothing. I packed up my apartment in 2 days. No farewell dinner, no long talks, no warning. I left no note, just a broken pattern. The day I arrived in Seattle, it rained. I remember standing outside the terminal, breathing in cold air that felt clean, unfamiliar, and entirely mine. No one knew me here. No one expected anything from me yet. That night, I slept for 10 uninterrupted hours. The first bill came back 10 days later, stamped address unknown. I didn't realize it at first. I found out when my phone started ringing non-stop. My mother called first. She didn't scream or accuse, she sounded confused. There must be a mistake, she said. The electric company says they can't find you. I paused before answering. I don't live there anymore. There was silence. You moved, she whispered. Yes, when? 2 weeks ago. She didn't ask where I was. Instead, she asked, so, what are we supposed to do? That question summed everything up. Not how are you, not why didn't you tell us, just logistics. I exhaled slowly. You'll have to handle your own expenses, I said. Her voice sharpened. That's not fair. I almost laughed. The next call was from my father, and it came with anger. You don't get to just leave, he snapped. You don't get to walk away from responsibilities. I stayed calm. They weren't responsibilities. They were expectations you never asked me to agree to. You said yes, he shot back. Yes, I replied evenly. And now I'm saying no. That's when the threats started. Legal jargon he didn't understand, guilt masked as morality, accusations framed as concern. You think you're better than us now. You owe us. We raised you. I didn't argue or defend myself. I let him talk until he ran out of words, then I ended the call. The second wave of bills hit harder. Insurance canceled, late fees piling up, a credit card declined in public. My brother called next. He didn't bother pretending. We're drowning, he said flatly. You did this. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the gray Seattle skyline. No, I said. I stopped preventing it. That night, I opened my banking app and checked my balance. For the first time since my promotion, it had grown, not dramatically, but healthily. I felt a sense of grief for how long I had been conditioned to believe this wasn't allowed. 2 weeks later, my father showed up at my old apartment. The building manager didn't recognize his name. This unit isn't associated with that person anymore, she told him politely. He demanded my new address. She refused policy. When the certified letter arrived, addressed to me and returned unopened, something broke. They couldn't reach me, couldn't bill me, couldn't shift responsibility. They had to face their own numbers. I heard later that my parents argued constantly after that, not about me, but about money, about who was supposed to pay for what, about who allowed this to happen, about how they never meant for it to go this far. It had always gone that far, they just never felt it before. I didn't block them. I didn't make a big announcement. I simply became unreachable. And in doing so, I learned something important. When you remove access, you reveal intent. 6 months later, my father sent one last message: we need to talk. I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. Some people don't miss you, they miss the version of you that paid, fixed, and stayed silent. And when you stop being reachable, you finally understand the difference. That's all for today's story. Stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for watching.